What is the best FPV receiver system that you could possibly use? Is it the RapidFire? Or is it the new ClearView Racer 2.0? That's right, ClearView is back in the game trying to dethrone the champ. Have they succeeded? And what if you don't want to spend $300, $150 on your module? What about the more inexpensive ones? Like the OwlRC, like the TrueD. Hey, what about TrueDX? Shouldn't it be in there? Oh yeah, it is. And what if you don't like modules at all? What if you just want to buy some goggles like the Aomway Commander V1S, the Eachine EV200D, the Skyzone Sky O2S, the Fat Shark Recon, the Fat Shark Scout, the Attitude V5. That one technically has a module. They're all in here. They're all in the roundup, and I've tested them, and I've tested them head to head, and now you're going to find out which one is the right one for you to buy. I'm Joshua Bardwell, and you're going to learn something today. Let me be honest with you. When I first was thinking about how to put this video together, what I thought I might do is take each of the test results, put them in their own separate video, put an ad in front of each one, and then you could click on the link, watch the ad, and then watch the results. And I was like, yes, that will cause many ads and much ad revenue. And then I realized I'm actually a decent person, and that's a really scummy thing to do. So all of the test results that you want to see are in this video. There's timestamps down in the video description. You can just click the timestamp and jump right to the one that you're most interested in. But before you do that, I hope you will indulge me with just a couple minutes of background into how I run these tests, because, to be honest with you, because you're going to wonder, and you're maybe going to criticize the tests and be like, wait a minute, and before you do that, you should know how I ran them so that you can still criticize them just in a more valid way. The first thing I want to tell you is that the results you're about to see today are not a DVR recording. They are not a capture card. They're not even an output from the module played into an external monitor. I have used all of these methods in the past. I bought a $400 video capture card trying to avoid having to do what I've ended up having to do, which is I'm actually taking a GoPro and I'm holding it in front of the eyepiece of the goggle, and I'm just recording the actual goggle screen. And that is an enormous pain in the butt. I've ruined so many takes by accidentally having the goggle misaligned or by having glare on the screen. But I think it is the only way to actually see what the screen is doing. All of the other methods that I've mentioned, when I've compared them, they don't look the same, and that's not fair. I want you guys to see the actual static that the actual goggle is, what you would see if you held it up to your face, and this is the only way to do that. Now, one side effect of that is that you will only ever see two modules head-to-head at once. And the reason for that is that this is a $500 goggle and this is a $400 GoPro, and despite everyone believing that I get everything for free, I don't, and that's just, I can only afford to buy a set of two. So everything is a one-to-one head-to-head. Honestly, I think that's better. When I look at other tests that I've done in the past or that other people do, and they've got 4 or 8 or 16 on screen at once, it's really just impossible to track all of that at once anyway. Who's winning? I don't know. It's all just noise. So by showing you just 2 at a time, you can really easily say who's winning. Okay. One of the problems that has to be overcome when doing testing like this is making sure that nothing else is influencing the tests. And one of the biggest things that can influence the tests is the quality of the antennas. Now, all of the antennas that I'm using are brand new. They've never been flown. They've only been used for this testing, but I still wanted to try just a little harder to make sure that none of the antennas was throwing off the results. So I used the OwlRC SWR meter, and this is it's about a $100 tool, which for RF equipment is pretty cheap, and it measures the standing wave ratio of the antennas. And without getting into too much detail, I basically used this to look for antennas that were significantly different and pick antennas that were as similar as possible to minimize the risk that oddball antenna was throwing off the results of the test. Speaking of antennas, I have to thank the antenna sponsors for this testing. This is the Ready-Made RC Strix Hoot Omni antenna, and this is the Lumenier Axii patch antenna. These were provided by their manufacturers for me to use in the testing, and unless the test tells you otherwise, these are the antennas we're using in the testing. There are links down in the video description if you want to go pick up one of these. Thank you to the sponsors for sending them. Now, in the past, I've done this testing at my house, and that's fine if you fly in kind of a wooded environment like my house, but that environment doesn't have a lot of multipath reflections. So in order to really stress these modules and show which one is the best, I got access to this. I guess it's like a livestock ring. I don't know. It's a giant metal warehousey building with metal ceiling, metal roof, and tons of multipath. And in the beginning of the test, we're going to do a couple laps through here to let you guys see how each of the modules handles multipath reflection. See those horizontal bands? That's multipath bounces. Following that, we're going to fly out this door here, and we're going to do kind of a long distance run. It's not really long distance. The transmitter's only at 25 milliwatts, and the receiver is inside the barn. So there is some multipath bouncing, but we're basically just going to fly out this direction until we completely lose signal and see how each of the modules handles it. It's worth saying for this part that I observed that there were times when a signal would kind of disappear and then come back, and it's possible that we're getting some kind of random bounces off of something, so you'll have to judge for yourself. One way to analyze these results is the very first time when the complete signal loss would have caused you to crash. If you lose signal for a half a second and crash, it doesn't matter if it comes back a half a second later. The other way to look at it is which module seems to do best overall. Sometimes you'll see one go out and then the other go out, and it just feels like that was just the same bounce hitting them at a different time. Okay, on to the actual results. There are a couple modules that are notably absent from this roundup. One of them is the UBAD LaForge, and the other is the Furious FPV Achilles module. The LaForge, the firmware on it hasn't been updated in over a year, and I kind of was like, okay, I'm just going to use that as an excuse. It's still for sale, but if they're not updating the firmware over a year, it seems to me like they're not that interested in supporting it. That's just my opinion. The Furious Achilles module has been discontinued by Furious. I don't know why they did that. The Achilles firmware is awesome. I just need to get a different module to put the firmware on, and I don't currently have one at the time of this testing, so that one is also out. And folks, I'm not going to make you wait for the one that you are probably most interested in. Here is the RapidFire versus the ClearView. They both have two Omni antennas. They have no directional antenna on them. That's going to give them a big advantage here inside the auditorium in the multipath environment. But as we go out here to do the longer distance test, that'll put them at a significant disadvantage compared to, I mean, even though these guys do great with two Omnis, they still, if you're doing long distance in a straight line, they do better with a patch on them. So they really, if you see that they kind of fall a little bit short, you're like, oh, they didn't get as far as the other ones did. That's because they are at a big, big disadvantage with the Omnis. They have like an 8 dB disadvantage. But they are both using the exact same equipment, so it is a fair test for both of them. In this one, they're both being compared equally, and you can see for yourself which one you think wins. Remember, one way to judge this is which one broke up first. Which one would you have crashed first if you were flying? The other way to judge it is which one just seems to do better overall, because the modules are not in exactly the same place. So, you know, one of them might get a bad bounce, the other one might get a bad bounce. It's totally up to you. I just present the results and you interpret them. This test is the RapidFire versus the TrueDX, the exact same setup as before, two Omni antennas on both. Since the TrueDX is supposed to be one of these sync reconstruction, frame combining, unicorn magic modules, that's a fair way to test it against the RapidFire. The TrueDX is set to the indoor setting. I wanted to see how it performed here in the high multipath environment, and that's what I think most people are most interested in. Some would argue that having it set on the indoor setting will give it a little bit of a disadvantage at the most extreme range. What happens is if you're on the indoor setting, then when it always tries to lock sync, always. On the outdoor setting, once the RC gets very low, the TrueDX stops trying to lock the sync pulses, which I'm not sure why wouldn't you just always try and lock the sync? I don't know, but it is on the indoor setting. I had to pick one, and that is the one I picked for this test. Now we've got the RapidFire versus the SkyZone Sky02C. And in this case, we've got an Omni and a patch on both. I did this because the Sky02C is really designed to be used as a traditional diversity module, and I felt it would benefit more from the patch antenna than from having two Omni antennas. Since I know the RapidFire can also benefit from the patch, I put the same settings on it. So that's the setup here. You'll also notice that the color temperature is slightly different on the Sky02C screen. It's a little bit bluer. I did my best to match the color temperature in the camera while we were there, but obviously it's not a perfect job. You'll just have to decide for yourself what you think of the results. Now here's the RapidFire versus the OwlRC. And if you've noticed that the first few tests all are against the RapidFire, it's because, well, I think the RapidFire is widely considered to be the best, if one of the best, if not the best modules out there. So may as well see how everybody stacks up. Can you get the same performance from like an $80 or $90 OwlRC that you do from a $140 RapidFire? You can look at these results and decide for yourself how you think they stack up. This is the RapidFire versus the TrueD. Not the TrueDX, the regular old TrueD. And we're going to see if paying almost twice as much for the RapidFire module gives you better performance. How much better performance do you need to pay that much more for the RapidFire compared to the regular old TrueD? Next, we're going to leave the high-priced RapidFire TrueDX ClearView module behind and compare two more moderately priced modules. This is the OwlRC versus the regular old TrueD. And it doesn't say it on screen, but for all these traditional modules, we're having one Omni and one patch antenna, which is most often how they're intended to be used. Might be interesting in a future test to fly just in the multipath environment and try two Omnis versus two Omni and a patch, or left hand, right hand, but that isn't a test that we got to, at least not this day. Here we've got the RapidFire versus the EV200D, and the question we're going to try and answer is, can the quadversity of the EV200D help make up for the extra technology unicorn magic of the RapidFire? In order to do this, we had to decide what antennas to put on the EV200D, and I decided, well, obviously we're going to have one Omni and one patch, just like the RapidFire's got, but then the other two slots, what should we do? And I decided to put an opposite polarization Omni and patch on there to try and improve the multipath performance inside the auditorium, inside the ring. And on these long distance run here, maybe the opposite polarization would catch a bounce that the other one would have missed. Anyway, that's what I decided to do, just to see how it stacks up. Well, what about a more traditional module like the TrueD? How does that stack up to the EV200D? Both of them are traditional diversity modules, but the EV200D has quadversity, which means it gets two more antennas, and I've mixed them up with a left and a right hand to try and just give it as much advantage as it could possibly have. How does the traditional TrueD stack up against the quadversity of the EV200D? Now comes the Attitude V5 versus the TrueD, and we're going to see how that stock OLED module in the Fat Shark Attitude V5 compares to an aftermarket module. In this test, the Attitude is using the stock antenna that comes with it. It's just a little clover leaf and a little patch, and we're going to do another test next to try it with an upgraded aftermarket antenna, but I figure many people who are going to buy the Attitude V5 are going to just use the stock antennas that come with it, whereas everybody who buys a TrueD has no choice but to buy an aftermarket antenna. So let's see how these stock antennas stack up. This test is the exact same as the last one, Attitude V5 versus TrueD, but this time they're using the exact same antennas, the Strix Hoot Omni antenna and the Lumenier Axii patch antenna. So if you bought the Attitude V5 and you upgrade the antennas, this is more like what you'd get. And this really is going to show the relative performance of the modules themselves as opposed to sort of the whole Fat Shark kit that you get with antennas included. This one is the Fat Shark Recon V3, and it's very important that you understand that this does not have diversity, and I'm using it on the stock antenna that comes with it, which is just a little dipole whip. So basically, we would expect the Recon to do really poorly in this test. If it holds its own at all, it's actually done a really good job. Since it doesn't have diversity, most people aren't going to put a patch antenna on it. The performance would be expected to improve somewhat if we had an upgraded Omni antenna, but you don't have diversity. What are you going to... Honestly, I try not to skew the results by commenting on them, but I'm amazed at how far you did get with this stupid little dipole antenna and no diversity. The TrueD is on a patch right now, and it's doing much better. I don't think that's controversial. I don't think I'm skewing the results. But the fact that the Recon is like even barely hanging on, I think says that Fat Shark did a pretty freaking good job designing it. I'm not saying it's better overall, but, you know, kudos, I guess. Here is the Fat Shark Scout versus the TrueD. And the difference between the Recon V3 in the previous test and the Scout is that the Scout has a built-in like 10 dBi patch antenna. So it does have diversity, and it does have a directional antenna, which will help give it some advantage when we're going out on the long distance test. Other than that, it's using the stock cloverleaf antenna that comes with it, not the Strix Hoot antenna, because again, I figure if you buy a kit like that, that might be what you're going to use. Let's see how it does. Finally, here is the Aomway Commander V1S. We're using the stock antennas on this. We could always upgrade with aftermarket antennas, but that would raise the price of the goggles by maybe $20 or $40. And I figured keeping them kind of price competitive might be a better idea. I know some of you are going to disagree with that decision. Hey, there's always a chance to go back and test some more. But here's the Commander with the stock antennas it comes with versus the TrueD with the Strix Hoot and the Lumenier Axii patch antenna. The Commander does have one Omni and one patch. It comes with a Aomway patch antenna. Some people say it's pretty good. See for yourself. So that brings us to the end of the video, and there's nothing for me to recap here. You saw the tests. You have your own opinion about what the results are. The only thing I have to say at this point is I know there are some matchups that you probably wish I'd gotten that I just didn't have time to get. For example, I kind of used the True D as the benchmark against which all the others, because I just know it's really popular. But some of you probably were dying to see like Attitude V5 versus Skyzone Sky 02. If there's a matchup that you particularly want to see, please put it in the comments. I will be going back to this place, this exact location. Now that I've got an in there, I hope I can do more testing, and I want to get the exact, I got a big bag full of modules there and goggles, and I just want to know what you guys want me to do with them. The other thing I want to say is all of the products that you see in this video are linked in the video description. If you're trying to make a buying decision, and if you've watched this far and you're watching my conclusion now, I can only hope that you got a lot of value, that this is really helpful content. And one way that you can help sort of pay that back, if you feel like it, if you think I earned it, click the affiliate links down in the video description, and any purchase you make after you click one of those affiliate links, I get a small commission, and that's one of the ways that I support myself. You can buy anything. You don't have to buy the goggles. Just click the link before you do any of your normal shopping. Click any of my affiliate links to that store, and I get a small commission when you make any purchase. It's a small thing you can do. Thank you so much. I hope that you loved it. I loved it. I think this is some of the best testing I've done. I'm so happy to not have to run around a parking garage carrying a quadcopter because I'm scared to fly it because the security is going to come kick me out. Now I have a multipath environment where I can do some testing. If you can think of any way to get this test to be even better, tell me in the comments, even though I'll probably be a little bit annoyed, but I will listen. Thank you guys so much for watching. Happy flying.